Hi there, welcome to vlog confessio 13. The other morning I was taking the dogs out into the back garden, and as I was taking them, I looked to my right, and I saw this curious silver light coming from somewhere. I knew well. I saw it was coming from the window, which is the garage window, and but that's all I knew. And for 20 seconds or something, I had absolutely no idea what I was looking at. Uh, and then after that 20 seconds had lapsed, I suddenly realised that I was looking at the garage light through the rather broken down window of our rather broken down garage, and which has been sort of, the window's been papered up inside a bit, but the light was coming through this paper in places, and then it was like coming through the places where there wasn't any paper. So it was kind of an eerie silvery light, which was being refracted through plastic and rather dirty glass, because nothing's been done to that window for years, and so then I'd realised I'd left the garage light on all night long. So then you go into self-recrimination about, I shouldn't have left that light on, or, what do you think, money's burning there, and all this kind of stuff. So you get all these different thoughts mounting up on each other. But the initial experience was one of, I suppose, kind of wonder, really. I just didn't know what I was looking at, and yet I was looking at something incredible, wondrous, right outside anything I'd ever experienced before. And I was contemplating this experience, in the morning afterwards, and then it suddenly dawned on me, well, I had another kind of memory of being in my cot when I was literally, I don't know, maybe I was about a year old or even less than that. And I had this toy, which I remember the colour of, which was light blue. And I think it was some kind of horse or dragon or something. And I was holding this object. And the reason why this comes back to me quite clearly is because there's also a photograph of me holding the very same object in my hands. One of these photographs that's taken by a professional in a photography shop, and I had the very same sort of animal, and I was grasping it. But I don't remember being in that shot, but I do remember being in my cot, and turning this object over and over and examining it very, very carefully. And I had no idea what I was looking at, but I knew it was something wondrous, something significant, something interesting to look at. And all I remember basically is the colour. But I also remember the experience of not knowing what it was that I was actually looking at, because I was too young to know what I was looking at, presumably. So that was kind of that sort of memory. And these two, the memory of a childhood experience and the experience I had just yesterday, kind of sort of came together in my mind, and I suddenly had this kind of epiphany that in other videos I've talked about how you have to take something with you from this world into the next, something that you cognicize about, such as compassion and kindness, and you cognize about that, and you take this cognition with you, and that cognition propels you through across the abyss to the other side. And I said that you have to have this in order to have some sort of reference point to actually understand what it is that you're experiencing on the other side. But I think I think I want to retract that a little bit, actually, because I think it is possible, and this in fact probably happens to all of us all of the time, is that often we see something, and we experience it without knowing what it is and without having any cognition about what it is that we're seeing. So we don't know what it is we're seeing, but we know we're seeing something. And if we're feeling safe and secure and nothing's actually coming towards us in an aggressive way, then no matter how weird the thing looks, or how sort of outlandish or extravagant, one might say, the thing looks, we have no problem with experiencing it without knowing anything about it. So as a baby, I was experiencing this object that I was looking at on one hand, and then yesterday I was experiencing the light through the window in another instance. And as I say, I didn't have for about 20 seconds. I didn't have any notion of what it was I was looking at, but I didn't mind. I was just experiencing whatever it was that I was seeing. And presumably as a baby, I was experiencing this object for quite some time, obviously without knowing anything about it. And then perhaps I got hungry, and then I did know about being hungry, so then I'd cry for food, and that's cognition sort of coming in. That's kind of like my base needs coming in. I'm hungry, so what's going to be done about it, and then 20 seconds later, when I was looking at the window, I realised I'd left the garage light on all night, and then I started to cognise about that, and even go into recriminations about that, and self-recriminations, and blah blah blah. Ruined the whole thing, of course. I remember actually one boy that I was very quite close to in an autistic school. A school for autistic persons, and there was an 8-year-old kid, and he used to pick up leaves and examine them very, very closely and very carefully, and he wanted, obviously, he was examining them over and over. So then he asked me about this leaf, and I had to remember my biology, and I explained about the veins of the leaf, and they carry nutrients from the stem, and I went into the whole thing about how it makes energy from sunlight due to chlorophyll, and I went on and on and on about all this stuff I knew from biology, and he was most impressed. And then it was time for him to go to dinner. And of course, usually they had a lot of trouble with him going into dinner because he didn't want to go, and he used to sort of lash out sometimes at the teachers or the minders. But I just sort of said to him, I think it's time to go in, and he said, "Oh yeah, okay." He was wandering in with me with his leaf in his hand, looking at his leaf very, very intently. And I just sort of gently guided him towards the eating hall, and I didn't have any trouble from him at all, because I made a connection with him because he was so interested in the mechanics of this leaf. But he was also looking at it. I mean, I don't think he really had much cognition about what it was he was looking at. But again, he was experiencing it, and he was safe and secure, and he had somebody who was giving him attention and interested in what he was interested in, which meant he didn't get stressed about, going into a different situation, which is what autistic persons get stressed about. They get stressed about going into new situations, as indeed everybody does, actually. You don't have to be autistic to get stressed about anything new. We have a natural fear of anything new. We get suspicious of it. We get stressed by it. And yet initially we look at everything that is new with the innocence of an autistic person, or with a young child, or with just somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at because they've been sort of, taken aback by what they've been by what they're looking at, and they don't understand what it is they are looking at, you see, for 20 seconds or whatever. And anyway, the moral of all this is, I think that entering the ineffable realm of the true God is probably like looking at that light through the window. You go in and you don't know what it is you're looking at all, and you don't have any opinions. It's something so far outside your experience that maybe you don't need any reference point, and maybe because you're dead, perhaps you don't have any consciousness, you don't have any discernment or discursive consciousness as such. You just go. You're just in this innocent state of being, sit satananda, and you're just experiencing whatever it is that God is, and the sort of the stuff of God, as it were, and you're just experiencing, and you don't need any reference point. You don't need any references at all. In fact, if you had a reference point, you begin to sort of say, "Well, what's going on here? I don't like this. I'm a bit frightened of this," and talk about the fear of the Lord, and the shepherds falling down their faces when the angel appeared to them, because they didn't like something that they didn't understand. You see, something they couldn't refer to. And yet, when they came to their sense, when the angel spoke to them, of course, they understood speech. So that was okay. They had a reference point there immediately because the angel spoke to them and said, "Fear not," which is a great way to open a conversation. And perhaps we should all open our conversations with people by that phrase, "Fear not." I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I'm not trying to steal your thunder. I'm not trying to steal your woman or your man. I'm not trying to, mess you around or mess you up or mess you over. I'm not trying to scam you. Fear not. Anyway, the point is the shepherds needed a reference point, which was human conversation, and they needed a human form, I guess, although the form of it was angelic. So to start with, they went into fear. But maybe for 20 seconds, they just didn't go into anything. They just saw this angel, and it was just a light in the sky, and then it was like light with wings and a form with wings, and they just, it was just like somebody just appeared to them as light. And for 20 seconds, they were just completely all right about it, and astonished, but safe and secure, and well, didn't have any opinion on it for a short time initially. So maybe, in fact, if we enter into the ineffable worlds, minus our doubts and fears and conscious discursive mind, which is always trying to refer everything to everything else in order to feel safe, in order to anchor itself somewhere. Maybe we don't need that anchor after we're dead. We're liberated from this obsession with what is it that we're seeing. What is it that I'm seeing? Is it safe? Is it nice? Will I like it? Will I not like it? You go beyond that complete duality, and you're just experiencing everything as is. And you're experiencing the reality of God as it is. And it doesn't matter if you don't know what you're looking at. It doesn't matter if you have nothing to refer to when you are looking at it or experiencing it. If looking can be said to be a verb which applies to heaven or something like that. And everything is okay. And it's like that 20 seconds of me looking at that light through the window. And that 20 seconds is extended into infinity. So forever, I don't give a monkey's curse or Nick Tinker's curse about what it is I am experiencing. I'm just there, and I've gone beyond whether something is threatening or something that's pleasurable or painful. I'm not in that duality anymore, so I've no need to know what it is I'm experiencing. On the other hand, I suppose it would be nice if you had the ability to cognize what you were looking at, and to cognize it in a completely positive way, so that in fact you were pretty convinced that everything is pretty wonderful. A bit like playing a computer game, no matter how weird the object you're looking at on the screen. Because you're in the safety of your own house and before your computer, it's basically, oh wow, that's amazing. You don't say yuck particularly. You're always saying wow, because it's like, wow, this is a computer game I'm in, or wow, this is a virtual reality. And so it doesn't really matter what you're looking at, because you're looking at something which is virtual. and something which isn't threatening to you because you're not really there, are you? You're in this virtual world, so it's just a game. It's just a virtual reality you're experiencing. So these kind of ideas sort of circulate around my mind when I'm trying to speculate what life would be like in heaven, in quotation marks, what it would be like to experience heaven or the ineffable worlds of the true God, and perhaps even this speculation in itself is something which has an effect on one's mind now, and produces a sort of endorphins of pleasure, perhaps, speculating about this, because it seems that you're making sense of something which could be a future experience right now. And that in itself is somewhat comforting and somewhat pleasurable in itself. So, sometimes speculation can be a positive thing, I think, really. As long as it doesn't become rumination and fear and you go into, oh my God, what's going to happen next sort of thing. As long as you keep it positive, it's good to speculate about what happens after death. It's not a problem, I think. Okay, so that was my things happen. Little things happen in life. Little things that you wouldn't normally take any notice of, but because I'm looking at things in a Gnostic way, I do take notice of these little things that happen, because these little things that happen that you can contemplate on later, perhaps these experiences are in some way Gnostic experiences as such, and it's not like you have to go into some deep meditation in order to have gnosis. Sometimes gnosis can just arise from the most mundane of experiences.